Hey, it's Jordan. I am delighted to be joined by Brendan Fischer. He is the Federal Reform Program Director at the Campaign Legal Center. And you and your group recently filed a FEC complaint, which I found interesting. We've kind of, in America, become numb to super PACs, and it's just kind of, although I find it to be still outrageous, it's kind of baked into the cake. But you filed an FEC complaint specifically towards a group that seemed to only be in existence to stop Bernie Sanders' momentum during the primary. Can you kind of talk about what sparked you to file this complaint?
Sure. So the group was the Big Tent Project, and it was formed after Sanders won the New Hampshire primary. Its executive director, Jonathan Cott, who is a former aide to Joe Manchin of West Virginia, was pretty public. He talked to the press repeatedly, and he said that he was approached by donors who were concerned about Bernie Sanders' rise in the Democratic presidential primary. And in the course of a month, the group raised and spent $4.8 million, almost all of it on digital ads, pretty much all of it targeting voters in primary states. So they spent millions in Nevada, in South Carolina, in Super Tuesday states. And then after Sanders' path to the nomination narrowed, they went away. They stopped spending money. Jonathan Cott, the group's executive director, stopped talking to the press. The Facebook page has not been updated. The website has not been updated. They stopped tweeting. They just pretty much went away. After it became clear that Sanders was not going to sweep the Democratic primary states, Big Tent Project just ended. So the reason this matters is because Big Tent Project reported some of its spending to the FEC, but they never reported their donors. And under federal law, if a group has a major purpose of influencing elections, it's supposed to register as a political committee and it's supposed to disclose its donors. And Big Tent Project did not do that. So from our perspective, Big Tent Project was created for the specific purpose of stopping Bernie Sanders in the Democratic presidential primary. They spent $4.8 million in the course of a month, and then they stopped doing anything. The group clearly had the major purpose of influencing elections, and they violated the law by not registering with the FEC and not disclosing their donors.
And it kind of gets a little confusing because some PACs, my understanding is, don't have to release donor lists while others do. What are they registered as a 501c4? Like what specifically is their stated purpose and mission?
Yeah, exactly. So they are a 501c4. So there's a few different kinds of entities that operate in the electoral sphere. You've got the candidates and their own campaigns, and candidates can only raise money within limits. You can only accept $2,800 per election from an individual. Then there's the parties. Parties have slightly higher limits, but there are still limits. Then there's super PACs. Super PACs can accept unlimited amounts of money. They can accept corporate money. But super PACs do disclose their donors. They're registered with the FEC as political committees. They file regular reports of all of their spending and all of their fundraising. Mm-hmm. And then the other entity, the other groups out there are dark money groups. And these are primarily nonprofits, usually a 501c4 or 501c6.
And I mean, it's kind of obvious to me. Bernie wins New Hampshire, Iowa. It was a mess, but basically the narrative was he won. So he's got, obviously the Democratic Party and the media were kind of freaking out at that point because Bernie was up in the polls in Nevada too. And Biden, who by all extent, with the free media that these candidates get from CNN, MSNBC, elsewhere, I think he came in fourth and then fifth. I mean, he didn't even go to Nevada. He went to South Carolina. So to the naked eye, it kind of just looks like, this super PAC was created right after New Hampshire as a hit job on Bernie Sanders, and we have no idea who was part of that hit job. It could be, it's been viewed as, Joe Biden's campaign has been very kind to Bernie Sanders after he dropped out. They're working well together. Media reports have stated, President Obama, gave Sanders space to, make up his mind before he dropped out. There's a lot of media and framing out there that, Obama world and Biden's campaign have been kind to him. But really, for all we know, the donors to this PAC could have been heavyweights in Obama's circle and Biden's circle. Am I wrong?
Yeah, well, we have no idea where the money came from, and that's why dark money is so problematic, because the money could come from it could have come from Republicans, it could have come from Democrats, it could have come from the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, for all we know, it could have come from overseas. It could be another example of Russia or Iran or China or some other country trying to influence U.S. elections, and where there's no donor disclosure, you can't detect whether the contributions that funded the anti-Sanders ads were even legal. So yeah, we have no idea where the money came from. All we know is what Jonathan Cott told the press, and that is that there were a group of donors who were concerned about Sanders' rise after he won New Hampshire. So they raised $4.8 million in the course of about a month and spent it all on anti-Sanders ads.
Right. And can I ask you a broader question? Because, I think most people that pay attention to this stuff realize it's a complete sham, and these campaigns and super PACs coordinate, maybe not in writing, maybe not on the calendar having meetings, but when WikiLeaks released their emails, it showed Hillary Clinton's campaign had some coordination with Priorities USA. And it just seems like these are very flimsy laws because there's never any penalties handed out. I mean, there's been Republican PACs have coordinated with campaigns. And the FEC in general, we know, is, like everything else, a highly politicized body. So other than overturning Citizens United, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but does the FEC actually take these complaints seriously?
Yeah. Well, so there was a lot of coordination or near coordination during the Democratic presidential primary. A number of the candidates did have super PACs supporting them, and they worked to varying degrees with one another. The Buttigieg campaign worked very closely with Vote Vets, which was the super PAC supporting their campaign, and we actually filed a complaint against Vote Vets in the Buttigieg campaign. Because a Buttigieg campaign staffer tweeted out a pretty explicit request for the super PAC to run ads in Nevada, and then the super PAC followed through. And that violates the law. So I think your specific question is the FEC going to do anything about this? And it remains to be seen. There have been instances where the FEC has enforced the law. There have been a number of instances where the FEC has deadlocked and dismissed complaints, but we as a nonprofit watchdog organization do have some opportunities to hold the FEC accountable and to sue them if they fail to take action on the complaint or if they unlawfully dismiss the complaint. And with this Big Tent Project complaint in particular, we are prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm. And has the Big Tent Project said anything? Why they won't disclose their donors? Are they just kind of ignoring the complaint and hoping it doesn't catch on?
I've not heard them say anything public yet about the complaint.
Okay, interesting. And overall, I mean, I know you're a lawyer, but let's just talk the actual effect of this. I mean, Joe Biden. Your complaint isn't about this, but for example, Joe Biden. Advertising analysis said he received $100 million of free advertising between South Carolina and Super Tuesday. And when you look at the exit polls, a lot of Biden voters made up their mind in the final days before Super Tuesday. So although these ads are everybody gets sick of seeing them on TV, they do work because most people tune in, kind of like a couple days, a week before, do some Googling, and you watch ads. So do you think that these ads, not to play pundit, had an effect, particularly in South Carolina, where none of the polls really showed Bernie Sanders losing by that much?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's impossible to point to any single factor as decisive in an election, but clearly $4.8 million is a lot of money, and almost all of that money, I think about $4.6 million of the $4.8 million spent by Big Tent Project went towards digital ads. And digital ads are highly targeted and they can be highly personalized. and $4.8 million and they're also cheap. Digital ads are cheap. So $4.6 million in digital ads is a lot of ads. So I think it's fair to say that the amount spent and the way that they spent it did have some level of impact. The other interesting thing about Big Tent Project, and we put out a report about this about a month ago. As I mentioned, the group spent $4.6 million on digital ads, and we now have archives of certain political ads run on certain platforms. So Facebook and Google and Snapchat have all created archives of the ads that they host. And typically, we think of most political advertising happening on Facebook and happening on Google. But when we went to the archives, when we went to the Facebook and Google archives to see what Big Tent Project had actually spent and what the ads actually looked like, we found that only about 4% of the FEC reported anti-Sanders ads from Big Tent Project were appearing in the Facebook and Google and Snapchat archives. So around 96% of Big Tent Project's digital ad spending is entirely unaccounted for, which probably means that it was running on less accountable platforms that have not created these archives. So Hulu, for example, Sling, streaming services that host political ads do not create archives, so we can't see what those ads were and what they look like. So that means we really don't know what kind of messages Big Tent Project may have been distributing to voters in these primary states, or whether the messages were even accurate.
And it's also, that goes to a whole broader problem, because we could have a whole nother interview on Facebook, which I think should be a public utility. Well, is a public utility. But it doesn't seem like Facebook has any. Does Facebook and these other platforms mandate that the donors are disclosed? Because it looks like if you're able to do ads on Facebook and other platforms as Big Tent Project, if they're not disclosing their donors and that's illegal with the FEC for television ads, why shouldn't it be illegal for digital ads?
Yeah, so no, Facebook does not require groups to disclose their donors. And another...
Probably because their donors give money to Facebook, but that's a different story.
Another interesting and shady detail about Big Tent Project that we found is that Facebook was effectively allowing the group to run ads under an entirely different name. So Big Tent Project had the Facebook page, Big Tent Project. They were running, six figures in Facebook ads under the name Big Tent Project. But then we found another page, not called Big Tent Project, instead called I'm forgetting. United We Stand, I believe. And those ads, also similarly attack Sanders, were similarly targeted to voters in primary states. But there was really limited indication, at least on the face of the ad, that they were paid for by Big Tent Project. The group was called United We Succeed. I'm sorry, I just blinked on the name. So Big Tent Project running Facebook ads under its own name, but then also running ads under the name United We Succeed, which really gave little to no indication on the face of the ad that they were paid for by Big Tent Project Fund, which again, has very limited information about it in the first place. So there were sort of like layers of secrecy on top of layers of obfuscation.
Jesus. All right. Well, I hope we stay in touch for when the FEC responds to you. I think, honestly, part of our job in the media is to make sure it does not get normalized. These, frankly, in some cases, money laundering schemes. It really seems like they just created this hit pack on Sanders, which, is legal as long as you disclose the donors. We deserve to know who is behind these donors. Is it people in Biden's orbit right now? President Obama's administration? Trump? Who knows? But the people deserve to know. So thank you, Brendan Fischer with the Campaign Legal Center. We'll be in touch.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.